When is the property available? Does it accept Section 8? Can my pit bull live there? And then you have these good quality tenants who maybe you don't get a chance to talk to because you're getting inundated with people who aren't going to qualify anyway. So really, that's the premise of Tenant Turner, like how do we help people find that needle in the haystack?
Welcome to the Property Management Brainstorm Show with Bob Preston. Bob is the president, owner, and broker of North County Property Group, the fastest growing and top-ranked property management company in North County, San Diego. This podcast is for property owners and investors who are considering hiring a professional property management company to manage their property assets. You'll hear from leading professionals on the best practices surrounding the San Diego rental market, what's involved in successfully renting your property, and how to make sure your property is managed correctly. Now, here is your host, Bob Preston.
Hey, everybody. I'm assuming listeners on this show have renters in their properties who have pets. I've had several questions from listeners who inquired about pet insurance for their renters. So I've decided to look into this and have discovered Embrace Pet Insurance. Embrace Pet policies provide a plan that fits any budget and needs, but provides the same great nose-to-tail accident and illness coverage no matter how it's personalized. To explore if Embrace Pet Insurance might be right for your pet or family, follow the link in this episode notes. This lets Embrace know that we sent you and also helps support our show. Welcome to the Property Management Brainstorm Podcast. I'm Bob Preston, your host of the show, broadcasting from our studio at North County Property Group in Del Mar, California. On today's episode, we're going to discuss an aspect of being a landlord that can be incredibly time-consuming, if not managed efficiently, and that is the period of time from when you list a rental property to the time a tenant is actually identified and the lease is signed. So you can imagine all the moving parts during this period of time. So imagine inquiries by phone, by text, by mail, responding to those leads, pre-screening and pre-qualifying those people who have inquired, scheduling appointments to show, arranging for prospective tenants to see the property, then obtaining applications and making a tenant decision. Wow, I get tired just thinking about it. But I have with me today one of our partners at North County Property Group, James Barrett of Tenant Turner, a company that has some cool technology and software that allows us to handle this process much more efficiently than the typical landlord. So thank you so much for being here today, James.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Thank you for having me. It's obviously a very important topic within this industry because if you can't solve the leasing problem, then you end up with vacancy, which comes with a very high cost to property owners and property managers.
Absolutely. And I love the mantra at Tenant Turner. It's sort of to keep, landlords leasing their properties faster with less labor and essentially making that process more efficient. So maybe start us off today by telling us about yourself, the basic premise behind Tenant Turner, and give it a go.
Tenant Turner was founded about 5-6 years ago by myself and a couple of my co-founders. We were IT consultants. We were landlords, self-managing our own properties, and we dealt with, these leasing headaches firsthand. At the time, our rental properties, we bought them at kind of the height of the market, and then, the market crashed and couldn't get out from under them. So we were those accidental landlords that didn't have a lot of margin to hire a professional property manager. So we did it ourselves and, really struggled with the leasing side of things because we were in great jobs doing things for our companies and our businesses that we were consulting with. Couldn't handle the phone calls during the day, couldn't get back to the emails fast enough. You respond to a tenant later that day or the next day, they don't even remember who you are. So finding an immediate.
Right. They've probably already inquired to 5 other rental properties in the meantime, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, oh yeah, the townhouse in Laurel Lakes. We're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Where's Laurel Lakes? I've already inquired about several places. They may have even already applied to another property. It's funny, on the rental side of real estate, leads can come in faster than you can handle them, but they can go out, it feels like just as fast sometimes because they did find another property, particularly those high quality tenant leads. So.
Yeah, we also get the inevitable tire kickers who will call, leave a message, and then you're trying to get back to them, but you can never quite get back in touch with them.
Doesn't matter how you try to get back to them, right? Yeah, they're not that serious. Yeah.
So full disclosure, we're one of your clients, and we have found some things that have helped us greatly. I'm going to let you kind of tell me what you do for us, but this is a true story. This is we've been with you about a year now, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And last year I was sitting in my office, and I have a glass door and window where I kind of look out into the bullpen area. And I was watching this go on. The phones were ringing off the hook. The receptionist was answering calls from prospective tenants. If she was available, not on the phone, transferring those messages over to our leasing manager. This chit chat would go on about the property. Meanwhile, another call would be coming in, right? Mm-hmm. So the phone was already ringing again, being put on hold. Maybe a time to show the property was discussed, and the prospective tenant would say, well, I have to check with my husband or my partner, mm-hmm. right? Yep. Whatever. Let me call you back. So then that goes away, and who knows when or even if that person will call back. Okay, so now another call is being taken. That person calls back wanting to schedule, but now our leasing agent's on the phone. You get the idea, right? Yep. I mean, it was like chaotic, yep. and just didn't seem very efficient to me. And that doesn't even cover the concept of mail or email inquiries and mm-hmm. responses and texts, things like that. So I knew there was a better way to do it. I found you guys. So tell me what you guys do for us, to help us with those kind of scenarios.
Yeah. You painted a great picture of the problem, right?
Do you typically hear that kind of scenario?
Yeah. I mean, one of our little pop-up banners that we have at conferences that gets most people's attention is eliminate distracting phone calls and emails, because that's where the process starts. There's more phone calls coming in than any one person can handle, even if you just list a limited number of properties. And like I said, there's a significant number of tire kickers. They're often asking the same questions over and over. When is the property available? Does it accept Section 8? Can my pit bull live there? Some questions like that. And then you have these good quality tenants who maybe you don't get a chance to talk to because you're inevitably getting inundated with people who aren't going to qualify anyway. So really, that's the premise of tenant turners. Like, how do we help people find that needle in the haystack? How do we eliminate all the rough to get to the diamond? And that's a lot of what we do by using automation, using software, making property managers available 24/7. So now if somebody calls your leasing line at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday or 10 a.m. on a Sunday, they can get a text message. They can be on the couch with their significant other or partner, and they can go ahead and get themselves pre-qualified and scheduled. If they're not a good fit for the property, we kindly let them know and try to redirect them to your other listings that they could be better qualified for. But if they are a good fit, they can go through the process very easily and instantaneously, all online on their own.
Is this service or your software available to your typical landlord who might just be sort of managing a small portfolio, one or two homes, or is it mainly designed for people like North County Property Group or professional property managers?
I would say it's definitely developed with you in mind. You're our target customer, but we do have some people who manage small portfolios of their own properties that utilize the software. We have some property management companies that only have one or two units under management because they're just getting started who use the software too. And then, of course, we have some management companies that have thousands of units under management, right, and might even operate, across 10 different geographies and different offices. So, the leasing solution in and of itself is something that can be utilized by anyone. The value really comes in when you think about the scenario you just talked about, where phone calls are coming in such a rapid way because of the listings that are on the market. And that is often more associated with a professional property manager.
Yes. Well, we have hundreds of properties. So you can imagine how much part of the phone ringing phenomena is exciting, right? It's like, what can we do to make the phone ring? You hear businesses say that kind of thing. Well, careful what you ask for, because when the phone rings and half of the phone ringing is from riffraff, then it's tough to kind of cut through the haze, right? Okay, so I mentioned the part about who can sign up with you guys because I just want our listeners to know, who are investors, this might be something you might want to look into. Or if you're considering hiring a property manager like us, we have access to these kind of efficiency tools that a lot of companies or other people may not. And so this is why we can do things like offer a 30-day rental guarantee, because we're so confident in our process. And what I'm going to do now, James, if you're cool with it, is kind of ask you, so what is the workflow, right? I mean, I sort of described this semi-chaotic scenario in our office where the phone's ringing off the hook and we're trying to get back to people and schedule people. Can you do that quickly? I mean, is it easy to summarize sort of what might happen if somebody inquires? And I'm guessing, there are disparate ways where different prospective renters would contact a company like us. Well, I'm not guessing, I know that. So I'm asking kind of a loaded question, but walk our listeners through that.
Yeah, and this is another, reason why having a professional property manager on your team is good for your investment, because those inquiries, they can come in from all different angles. And the way that
disparate sources, that's how we refer to it.
Exactly.
Text, email, walk in, right? I mean,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, they're just flooding in, and it's one of those things that it can be kind of a chaotic environment. And so with Tenant Turner, we try to create simplicity with that and aggregate everything in one place. Doesn't matter if they call, text, email, or walk in and they're added by a property manager themselves. It's all getting aggregated into one place. That allows us to track everything. Another, component of Tenant Turner is being able to track the different stages all the various leads are in, and then creating an owner report for you guys to be able to share with the property owner so they feel involved in the process and aware of what's going on. And basically what that report is just a visualization of the leasing funnel. When we have leads coming in all the way through to the point that they've viewed the property and have applied for it.
So a lead comes in through whatever source. Some of them get kind of automatically picked up by you guys, right?
Yep.
And others might need to be added. Can you explain the difference there? And you have software that's online that captures these incoming leads into, for lack of a better word, kind of a customer management tool, right? Like where you can capture the leads. Okay. So
exactly.
Walk us through that. How would these people end up in your system?
Yeah. So those leads, as they come in from all those different places and all those different channels, they're ultimately going to get an immediate response from Tenant Turner. And that's a key component of utilizing a tool like this, is an immediate response in real time. So that way they don't fall through the cracks. Another component of what we do is provide automated follow-ups. So oftentimes it's hard enough to get back to a tenant lead fast enough in order to capture them. It's very difficult to follow up with them to continue to kind of nudge them through the process. So immediacy, automated follow-ups help encourage them to take the next step. And then for us, really the next stage after you kind of nurture those leads through the process is really about pre-qualification. Mm-hmm. Not every person is good for every property. Anybody who's ever managed a property, whether it's on their own or through a management company, knows that. And the way that we look at it is we've created our own tenant match score for each individual listing. And a person in our score might be a 10, which is a perfect score for one property, but then be a 0 or maybe a 3 for another property, sure, based upon their income or desired move-in date, or maybe some items.
Pets, right? Pets, things exactly. Like that. Yeah. Size of their family, number of bedrooms, 55 or older. There are all kinds of, pre-screening items.
And what we found too is that, not only is it that the property manager or showing agent doesn't want, to have to meet somebody at a property, even though they ultimately won't qualify, the person doesn't want to go out of their way to meet somebody at a property just to find out that they then have to submit an application and an application fee to then find out that they don't qualify. So making sure that the pre-qualification process occurs, doing it in a lightweight, mobile-friendly way for the prospective tenant, so that way they know if they're a good fit and the property manager knows if it's a lead worth continuing to nurture.
So from our perspective, we can build your system into our listing depending upon where it is. For example, on our website, we have a schedule a showing button that allows them to go kind of directly from that into your system. It works a little bit differently on Zillow. We have to post a link that they have to be smart enough to paste in. But once they do that, they can actually they're actually in your system, right? As a candidate or perspective, and then tell the listeners what happens from there.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing we capture from them is going to be name, email, and phone number. So that way the property management company can have that lead, even if it means they have to manually call out to them for a harder to fill vacancy. Then the next stage of the process is to get them to answer some of those pre-qualification questions. And we're very transparent about what those restrictions are. This property allows for people with no more than one cat. This property is available for people with no bankruptcies or evictions. So that way we can,
and we can customize those somewhat to our listeners, right? So we can set it up and set those criteria ourselves.
Yep, exactly. And that's the thing too. Not every property is going to follow the exact same. So that's why you can customize it a little bit. Can even have some custom questions in there. And then for our customers who are doing more self-access with the electronic lock boxes, we also have kind of an ID upload component that's part of that pre-qualification process. So standard questionnaire, optional custom questions, optional ID upload. And then from there, that person can book their appointment with a person or with one of those electronic lock boxes.
Okay. So yeah, hold that thought because we're going to dive into lock boxes and self-showing and that kind of stuff here in a minute. So what we've kind of focused on so far is the incoming lead and the efficiency through which we can basically schedule a showing. That right there alone is huge because you're saving all that back and forth and calling and message taking and checking with their spouse. They can sit down at night on that sofa together, access the system, pick a time that is, by the way, connected to our leasing agent's calendar.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
that we've established, so we know that she's going to be available. So huge, really, really big improvement in our process. And look, it's not that we're trying to get out of doing work. It's like we're trying to get the place rented quickly and make our processes way more efficient for our clients. And I think with your system, we're able to do that.
And I think about it like this, Bob. Like if I wish I could book every appointment in my life, like people can book showings through Tenant.
Right?
Like I can't tell you how many times I've had to go. The dermatologist is a great example. I don't know when they're available. I don't know when I can get in there. Whenever I call them, it takes me forever to get a hold of somebody. And then when I do, it feels like we can never come to an agreement on when I can actually go see the doctor. And it's like, you know what? If I just answer a couple of questions about what I want to see them for, they match me up with the appropriate doctor. I pick from their actual availability. It immediately pops on my calendar. It's and I could do it on my time, not 9 to 5. I could do it 10 o'clock on a Tuesday, and that would be perfect for me.
I feel your pain on that. I'm a tennis player and I'm a member at a tennis club. And I keep telling the owner of the club, you need to have an online court reservation system, dude. Because plus just find the time to remember. We're all busy, right? And you got a call, from the whatever. Sometimes you get the message machine. I mean, same exact thing. Okay, we digress. All right. So we've kind of gotten to the point where we have an appointment. Let's just pretend that, right? Whether we're the property management company, the landlord, whatever, or the tenant. What traditionally are the ways in which landlords show their properties? I mean, maybe you can just start with that, okay? Because I think it's a really interesting question because there's a lot of different strategies behind that, right?
Yeah. And for us within Tenant Turner, we have two kind of big bucket categories of how people can go view a property. We have in-person showings where, a leasing agent, landlord is going to physically meet the person at the property and show them the rental. Then we have self-access viewings. Within in-person appointments, that's normally when you're defining open houses. So you can say, all right, we're going to host an open house Saturday 2 to 4. You can do that. Or, what a lot of our customers do is use some general availability, which is kind of 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And then people get to pick and choose what the most appropriate time is for them. And so in-person appointments still most widely used, most traditional, and you have a couple of options around, more open house style or group showings or one-on-one appointments.
And when the viewings or the showings are scheduled, you guys help us confirm those, right?
That's right. And that's a huge part of the process. As soon as the appointment gets booked, we're immediately sending out calendar invitations. So that way it's put on the person's Google Calendar, Outlook Calendar, Yahoo Calendar, whatever the case is. And that helps encourage them to be there. And then we also do get them to confirm by text or email. And getting those text message confirmations increases the likelihood that they'll show up by 75%. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. Like sometimes it's hard enough to get back to a lead in the first place. It's hard enough to follow up with them. It's hard enough to get the appointment booked. But then once you got the appointment booked, there's still lots of activities left in order to actually get them to show up.
Oh, yeah. And, that unfortunately, just kind of we were talking about tire kickers earlier, sometimes between the time you've got them scheduled and the time you were planning to meet them, stuff happens in people's lives and they may change their mind. They may decide, oh, let's not move. I mean, sometimes they just don't even bother. They just don't show up, which then is a big waste of time too. So the confirmation aspect really helps us. And you do that by text, by email, right?
You do by text and email, but most commonly we see, text message responses at that point. And then also we do a 2-hour reminder before the appointment too, to further encourage people. But either of those points, we give them the option to cancel or reschedule. To your point just now, I find it fascinating to look at the cancellation reason. So we capture a cancellation reason from those prospective tenants when they do cancel, and we ask them, are they still interested in the property or not interested in the property? If I'm a firefighter and there's a building on fire and I can't go to my showing, I'm still a good tenant.
That's a little different than somebody who just, doesn't bother to show up. Right?
It doesn't just bother. Exactly. So it's for me, that's one of my favorite features within the tools, looking at those cancellation reasons, because like, okay, this person, this is not going to work out. That is not a good reason. if they're going to stand me up under this situation, then they're not going to be a responsible tenant. But then others, you look at it, you're like, you know what? That's a legitimate reason. There's a family situation. There's a work situation. They're taking responsibility for what's important. Let's get them rescheduled and get them to come view this property.
Let's quickly describe a hosted showing. Is like you mentioned, could be, some people call them open houses. We prefer to call them like we'll be there between, because we don't want to call it an open house because then you might just have riffraff walking in off the street, and we don't tend to want that. We want people who have inquired or interested and are there to see the property to rent it.
Yep.
But we do oftentimes use that strategy where we just say, hey, our agent will be there between 1 and 3 o'clock on Thursday, and we sometimes kind of like to create sort of a feeding frenzy where people are coming in and oh wow, look at all the people, we better act quickly on this, right? So that's sort of helpful. Or, it might just be to a single couple, it might be after hours, whatever, but there's somebody there from our company. Or sometimes it could be another agent who's licensed and has MLS access or whatever, and we will give them the code to the lockbox. And now that's sort of the hosted thing. So let's talk lockboxes and the concept of self-showing. So I've recently discovered a cool new service called Instacart, which saves you a trip to the market for groceries. We like to share this service with all of our renters in our portfolio properties because they might be here on vacation, have a sick kid at home, or just stuck at work all day with no time to go to the grocery store. Instacart connects you with personal shoppers in your area to shop and deliver groceries from your favorite stores in as fast as an hour. They give you unlimited grocery delivery for one low monthly fee and drop those items right to your front door. Maybe you need that special ingredient for a meal being prepared for your dinner party. My wife had knee surgery this summer and was laid up for a few days. Leaving grocery shopping to me, now that was a bad idea. Well, you get the picture. You can shop any store in your area for the items or deals you prefer. Every item is hand-selected by personal shoppers. They pick the freshest produce and make sure your eggs are safe too. So give it a try. Follow the link in the show notes and get free delivery if your first order is over $35. This also lets Instacart know we sent you and helps support our show. Let's talk lockboxes and the concept of self-showing. So you guys have a special lockbox. It's a publicly available lockbox, but you guys kind of customize it. Let's start there. Tell us about CodeBox and how that kind of fits into your system.
So the electronic lockbox concept, has been emerging for the past, 5 to 10 years or so. And it's a great way to use a realtor type lockbox without being a realtor. And the big component that Tenant Turner steps in and does is really around, some of the ID upload, scam detection and prevention. So that way those lock boxes aren't getting into the wrong hands. And that way only the appropriate people are actually getting access to the property. But those lock boxes, what's great about these electronic lock boxes compared to a mechanical lockbox or a combo lockbox is each person who goes to view the property, they're each getting their own unique code. That unique code is only good for the day that they've been authorized, and it's only good for a short window of time, so that way they can't come back and reuse it.
Presumably the time that they scheduled for their viewing to be.
That's right. Yeah, we did run some queries on this, and we have found that 90% of people will show up 90 minutes before, 90 minutes after, like within that window of their appointment. So
okay, so you make it a little bit broader, a little bit of a buffer. Okay, if a vendor wants to go in to do some repairs as a property management company, we can give a vendor a code. So that's kind of nice, right? But again, it's unique. It can be unique to them. We have a general code that our agents use, so that's fine. They don't have to remember a new code every time they go in. We can also, to a real estate agent who's a member of MLS and shows us their license or their card, we can give them a code, right? And so it works very seamlessly across a broad set of categories. Okay, so most of our rental properties, unless there's maybe someone still living there, will typically get a lockbox. I don't want to promote their brand necessarily, but I think the brand you typically use is called CodeBox, right? Is that what you guys call it?
Yeah. Historically, we've used the CodeBox electronic lockbox, and then more recently, we've also released an integration with SentryLock electronic lockbox. So similar products.
Right.
Some people may be more familiar with SentryLock because they're owned by the National Association of Realtors and are used by a lot of MLS, systems. And we've taken that concept from the for sale market and we brought it down to the tenant side.
Gotcha. I think we've explored that with you, and for some reason we've decided not to go there yet, but let's keep an eye on that one because we do have a lot of realtors who have Century cards, obviously, which makes it easy. Okay, so let's dive into then the concept of self-showing, because this is tied to the concept of the lockbox. Tell us about that. I know it's a trend and gaining ground rapidly in the property management and rental market. So tell us what that is, and let's just start there.
We've identified, more and more companies moving to self-access viewings, and a lot of it's around just the significant efficiencies that it can create and the fact that it opens up a rental to be viewed normally before business hours, after business hours, and even on the weekends. So traditionally, for an in-person appointment, there's multiple schedules that are trying to be accommodated. And obviously, the more schedules that need to be accommodated, the more difficult it is. But sometimes you're dealing with the current occupants' availability for somebody to show that home. You're dealing with the leasing or showing agent's availability to show that home. And then you're dealing with the prospective tenant's availability to go look at that home. With self-access, it's really streamlined into just when does that prospective tenant want to go take a look at it. And of course, once we've pre-qualified them and vetted them, they can pick a time of their choosing. And we're seeing more and more folks utilizing that type of technology. And we've ran some analysis on, what time of day most people are going. And, for the most part, people are doing self-access in the middle of the day. But, what we're seeing is about 10, 15, about, 20% of viewings are occurring after hours. And then, even if you look on the weekends, for example, 19% of our self-access viewings are happening on Saturday alone. So, that's a significant impact there of the number of viewings that you can have. And over 10% of viewings are occurring on Sunday. So it's a huge lift for people who want to go after hours during the week and those that want to go on the weekend, and giving them the ability to go view the home on their own.
Okay, so I'm a prospective renter, and I've contacted you. The property that I've contacted you about is set up for self-showing. You have the option of self-showing or hosted within your system. I know this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have about 50-50 split, and I'll touch on that in a minute. That's an option. So I identify myself, right? I have to show typically my ID, upload a driver's license, answer all the pre-qual questions. So you know, as a property manager, that I'm qualified. And in those situations, then we as a property manager can give that person a code to go see the property themselves. That's kind of how it works. Yep. And we count on them to go see the property on their own, provide feedback. And then periodically we do our rounds, right? Make sure all the properties are locked back up, but we've rarely had a problem with it. But we have learned to ask the owners, like, hey, we like this technology. We'd like to use it. Are you cool with it? And kind of an opt-in, opt-out type approach. Most people will say yes. Some still today. I don't know if you ever hear this. They're kind of, I'm really not comfortable with that. Yeah. And, we just don't want any surprises. We want to be totally transparent with our clients, but it really is a great way to get something ready quickly. So the obvious question, James, is it secure?
Yeah. I mean, short answer is yes, it is secure. Honestly, some of our customers use self-access for safety reasons. In some of the markets, they don't want their staff members, having to go out and meet these people who are, for lack of a better term, they're strangers. There's only but so much, that about that person. And, there's normally a lot of appointments have to go into showing a rental before it actually gets leased. And so a lot of times they use the self-access solution as a safer alternative to in-person appointments. And then when you think about with the property and the security of that, these are vacant units, right? So you wouldn't use this on an occupied property. You would only use self-access for vacant units. So we get questions like, well, is it secure? What if somebody steals the fridge? I guess that could happen. I've never had anything reported, like where somebody's gone in and stole the fridge, but theoretically it could happen. I imagine a person who'd steal a fridge from a vacant property wouldn't be against punching the leasing agent in the face and stealing the fridge, shortly after that. I was just
going to say that they probably would have already scoped out the house, realized it's vacant, and come at night and kick in the back door.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. For us, I mean, in order for them to get to the point of the process where they're actually going to view the property, we have many safeguards in place. They can't use a burner phone. They can't use an easily disposable voice over IP phone that they created online. It has to be an actual cell phone number tied to a contract. We run multiple data points about that person, from their IP address, their phone number, their email, their ID, their device ID from their actual phone. We take all of these things into account, plus dozens of other data points, and we pass it on to fraud detection tool to do some verification. Anybody who seems somewhat suspicious, will immediately flag them in the system where they can't go view on their own. And we let the property manager know, like, hey, there's something not right here. You may want to call this person before you grant them access to the property,
right,
so they can go on their own. So,
and the other thing from a security perspective is that we know when they've gone in,
yeah.
right? So if they go in and then we determine that something happened, we also know when they leave based on when they close it. So, I mean, it's like squatting. I mean, that can't really happen, right? I mean, what about scammers? I know there's been kind of a rise in scammers who pop up, particularly on Craigslist, where they sort of, I call it hijacking a listing. They take all your photos, your description, they put it up on Craigslist with their own listing at half the price, very unscrupulous to get somebody to pay them money, and then they kind of evaporate. So are these self-showing codes kind of falling into that trap a little bit, or what are you guys doing in that regard?
Yeah, it is definitely something that has been on the rise. We've done some research into this, and the FCC, they track just scams and online scam reports, and apartment or house rental scams are on the rise. So between 2017 and 2018, they increased by about 50%. So there's far more scams in this space within rental houses and apartments than there used to be. Craigslist really is the breeding ground for most of it. Some self-showing tools have been targeted by it. We're lucky in that with Tenant Turner, not only do we have some additional safeguards that prevent those types of scams, but only about a third of our listings are set up for self-access. So some of the other self-access tools, you're really going to be about 80, 90, 100% of their listings are going to be self-access. So with us, if a scammer were to try to do something with one of our listings, they've only got, a 30% shot that it would even be a self-access appointment. So it's a lot of wasted effort on their part.
Well, even if they were to acquire a code, somehow get through the system, with false IDs or whatever, get a code and then publish that code for people to go view, that code would only be good for that limited period of time where they were granted access. So
it would take a lot. I mean, some of the scams have, they have increased in sophistication. It's a cat and mouse game, right? So in our system, we now prevent all of these such things. But something that was happening was a international scammer, normally in Nigeria, would create the Craigslist fraudulent posting, generate interest in a rental property, have a real person go to that property, text in some information from that property, and then they would have a different person go back out to the property, get another text message in order to get the code that they would post. But like you said, oftentimes it was for naught, because by the time they could actually get another person to scam, the code would be no good. So that's the importance of those one-time use codes with short period of times to access.
Yeah, and this scammer phenomenon is not specific to lockboxes in your technology. I'm just I'm using it like in connection with it. I mean, it's become a problem on Craigslist and just in our business, but typically the scammer postings are discovered and taken down pretty quickly. I mean, Craigslist is doing a much better job of that. And sometimes we get these kooky calls, though. They're like, hey, I just talked to this guy. He introduced himself as Bob Preston. Well, no, that's me. Okay, well, gosh, yeah, because it was a different phone number. And what's going on here? And we can typically pull them down. Doesn't happen a lot, but it does on occasion.
Say one more thing about the scams. So we syndicate a lot of listings, market to different websites and stuff. I had an email from Realtor.com the other day. And essentially, a scammer was trying to scam through Realtor.com and sent a suspicious note through to Realtor.com about a listing that was associated with one of our customers' rentals. So it's just amazing to me, the length that these scammers will go through to try to do something. And oftentimes it's so overtly obvious what they're doing, it's very easy to shut down.
Right. I mean, an alert consumer should be able to sort of see through that typically pretty darn easily. All right. We touched on this briefly earlier in the episode, and I do want to be cognizant of time here. But if someone inquires or schedules a showing after hours, there's an autoresponder. I call it an autoresponder. You might refer to it with a different terminology that occurs. And I just think that's huge. Can you tell us a little bit about that? So if I come in, I schedule a showing or something, the system responds, right?
Yeah, and it goes back to that immediacy. These folks, they need to have some immediate action. One of the things that's great about what we put in our responses is it's very personalized. So it has the inquirer's name. It includes information about the rental, the things that we've found to be most pertinent to a prospective tenant. So you're normally thinking about price, even though they may have just seen it online. Often that is the most common follow-up question. How much is it? Well, it's the exact same price as it is on the Zillow listing, but
right. Yeah, they want to say that.
But it is interesting. So we reiterate that with folks. Things like that, and availability date, and then just some of the restrictions, because we don't want people wasting their time if they're ultimately not going to be qualified for the property, or their move-in date is well after when it's available, or vice versa.
Right. And then the other aspect I just want to touch on briefly, because it's very important to me as a broker and a business owner and someone who wants to always adhere to fair housing laws, are the pre-qualification questions. We have our entire staff go through fair housing training on a regular basis, a couple times a year. But, somebody could goof and say the wrong thing to somebody who calls in, and it could be a big kind of deal. Like, there are just certain things you can and can't ask a person or say to a person who's inquiring about housing. And that's done for obvious reasons to protect, the people on the other end. And we get that. But one thing that's kind of cool about your system is the pre-qual questions are set and in writing and sort of being done on a neutral platform. Do you hear that often from your clients and people like us?
We do, and it's one of those things, people can accidentally say the wrong thing. Software cannot accidentally ask the wrong question, which is great.
Right.
And fair housing is all about consistency and adhering to the standards that you set. So
right.
With us, we ask a standard set of questions, based upon that.
All within fair housing guidelines.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep. All within fair housing guidelines. And we stay up to date on those things, like one that was a recent update based upon HUD guidelines was around recency of felony convictions, so within our system, it used to be, have you ever been convicted of a felony? Well, based upon HUD guidelines, it's have you ever been convicted of a felony against people or property within the last 7 years? Because HUD guidelines had, changed. And so therefore the software needed to change with it. You had mentioned the class situation. We can change our software one line of code one time and it updates everywhere for everyone. If a leasing agent or somebody at the front desk missed that fair housing class, or maybe they're not scheduled for 3 more months, and that person calls in and they handle it incorrectly, you're opening yourself up to some risk there.
Yeah, one of the things we have in California is different counties and different cities have different ordinances related to what is called Section 8, which is basically housing assistance. And so we have to be really careful about who we talk to, how we talk to them, how open we are to accepting Section 8. And it's pretty much mandatory today. So those are all, and you have to stay on top of all those kind of things. So again,
absolutely,
for people considering renting their home on their own, these are really important factors. Let us do it for you. We know. James knows the law. We have access to these cool tools that keep us legally in compliance. We're kind of in the wrap up phase here, James, because in the interest of time, I could talk to you all day, but we do need to wrap up.
Likewise.
I mean, it's kind of reduced. It's reduced the number of incoming calls and time we need to spend on the phone to schedule showings. It auto responds, schedules our showings super efficiently. And I'm just wondering, are there metrics or analytics that you have kind of behind that to support that case that I just rattled off? Hey, I think this makes us more sufficient or more efficient.
Yeah. I mean, one of the metrics we constantly monitor is how many people who call into our automated answering system opt to continue down the automation path and use a self-service. And it consistently stays at about 70% of callers say, I want to receive a text message. I want to schedule my own appointment versus being connected with somebody. That still leaves 30% of people who do want to talk to a human, and the system can accommodate that and usher them into a person to chat with. But I love when I see those metrics because it tells me that the automated system is working. It's provided them a service that they prefer because we give them the choice of which path to go down. And it means that when they call in late at night or on the weekend, they're getting exactly what they need versus having to leave a voicemail and play phone tag.
Terrific. Hey, you've been so nice to come on the episode today and take your time out of your busy schedule. We went a little longer than 30 minutes today, but that's cool because it was a really good conversation.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you'd like to kind of wrap up with, tell our audience about yourself, the product, any last tips, any last pieces of advice?
Yeah, I would just say, leasing is critical. We look at property management as really kind of three core components: leasing, maintenance, and then the component around dealing with owners and accounting and finance. And so, whether you're doing it on your own or you're using a property management company like Bob's, like having a good process in place is important. Whether it's because of fair housing, whether it's because of efficiency, but ultimately to make sure you're putting money back in your pocket. A more efficient leasing process means less rent loss due to vacancy, and just ultimately everybody's going to be happier.
Cool. And if listeners wanted to reach out to Tenant Turner to get in touch, how would they go about doing that?
Yep. You can go to tenantturner.com. You can email me directly, james@tenantturner.com. We're active on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out through any of those channels.
Okay, cool. And I am going to put a link in our episode notes that our listeners can click through directly on as well. So, hey, thank you so much for joining the show today, taking your time out. What a great episode. Very much appreciated. I'd like to make a quick plug to our listeners to please leave a positive review for Property Management Brainstorm. It always makes our day, and it pays it forward to encourage more great guests like James on the show. So that concludes today's episode. Thank you to all of our listeners for joining Property Management Brainstorm. Until next time, we will be in the field working hard for our clients to maximize their property value and rental income and maintain top tenant relations. And we will see you next time.